Hello? Hmm.
Hello, welcome to the Project Console podcast, uh, episode 6, the Big Boot. Um, we'll find out what that means later on in the show, and but before we get started, panelists like to introduce themselves. Joel, would you like to start off?
Welcome, one and all, to Project Console. I'm Jory Moonstar, and oh boy, never thought I'd be talking about boots at a time like this.
This is Mr. Red Fox, owner proprietor of BS Buzzers. Glad to be here. Glad to be on one of these podcasts.
All right. Well, the first topic. Oh yeah, this is Kenoshi Abominito. Welcome, one and all, to the. Like I said earlier, welcome to the cast. Our first topic tonight is Avengers. Square Enix finally admitted that they set up their Avengers game like a free. They used the free to play model with their Avengers game. Um, honestly, actually, who would like to tackle this topic first?
May I?
Yeah,
Tag me in.
yeah.
Here's the thing. Two things. First of all, no S Sherlock. Because
Yeah.
you could see the template on how that was made. But I have nothing against it being set up in a free to play model. But here's the secret of free to play games. In order for them to succeed, two things. First of all, they have to actually be free to play. They charge people $60 at launch for that game, which doesn't make it free to play. Also, you need a tremendous amount of content in order for a game to be free to play. Like, it has to actually, like, the content has to be doled out at enough of a rate that it's worth people playing. Like Fortnite. I know a lot of people don't like Fortnite, or some people do like Fortnite considering the numbers. And Fortnite always has new content coming out. Like, always. Like, seems like every 2 or 3 months, or actually more than that, every month there's some type of new content coming to Fortnite that gets people interested. Same thing with that car game with the cars playing soccer. I forgot the title of it, but you guys know what I'm talking
about. Rocket League.
Yeah, Rocket League. So, like, I don't have anything against free to play, but you have to have new content coming out at a fair clip. And I think them putting the Marvel's Avengers into free to play hurt that game because, from what I heard from people who played that game, the single player campaign is actually pretty good and interesting. The tacked on free to play mechanics make the game worse. Because you can clearly tell the game wasn't like there's 2 games in one package, if you get what I'm saying. Yeah. There's the single player, and then there's the online aspect and all that stuff, and you can tell where like the monetization hurts it. So that's on them. It's a shame that a good game had to basically be handicapped because Square Enix got too greedy. That's a shame.
Yeah, it's absolutely embarrassing.
Really?
I mean, you kind of have to be embarrassed by the fact that you created this game. You're already charging people $60 for the standard, probably like $70 for the upgrade, $100 for probably the gold ultra edition, and yet you still are afraid that you can't make money off of the game, so you have to charge people for XP boosts and keep people in this rat race, sort of repetitive rat race where they can't make a dent in their progression,
in their progress.
Yeah, in their progress. So, in order to make a dent, you have to pay more money in order to do anything. It's
the sad thing is that they didn't give people what they wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, because when I heard Square Enix got the rights to make an Avengers, a Marvel video game. Like, oh, so they're going to make an RPG. Like, I mean, that's what I would think. It's like, okay, you're going to take Marvel and you're going to make it into an RPG. And think about how awesome it would have been if you could have played a Avengers RPG where you start the game as Kamala Khan. Because the single player, I mean, it's interesting. You're not playing the original, the OG Avengers, but that makes sense because, I mean, it's an original story. And then you recruit the other Marvel characters. You can customize your team the way you want to and do some cool stuff. Did we get that? No.
I mean,
We got the worst version of it.
and not to mention the graphics. I thought the visuals they chose for that game were just. I really wish they would have
Trash
stuck
here.
with like. I would have wished they would have stuck with like a comic book look or something, but they had they had to ape the movies and use those deformed
they
likenesses
wanted
of the
to
heroes.
capture that thunder.
It's like
Yeah, but they were so cheap they couldn't even get the likenesses.
they can. I mean, if you're not gonna commit,
So
to
you
bit,
got not Tony Stark
if you're not,
and not Scarlett Johansson.
yeah, if you're
I
gonna
was gonna make a joke that it's Dollar Store Johansson.
if you're gonna commit to if you're gonna commit to the bit, go all the way. Don't half do it. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's
which is what they did.
yeah.
It's like, I'm not Bruce Banner. Not Bruce Banner, not Scarlett Johansson, not Black Panther.
I mean, if any of you were developers of this game, what would you have done differently?
I would have done what the Guardians of the Galaxy people did. They knew that they couldn't get the rights to Chris Pratt and those other people, so they just based it on the comic book versions of those characters, which is a smart move, and did an original story that draws its inspiration from the comics, which would have made more sense for this. I would have done, like I said earlier, I would have done an RPG, maybe an action, an action RPG, because people don't want to do turn-based anymore. I would have done an action RPG, kind of based upon the concept of like using these Marvel properties. And that's what I would have done. I would have said, hey, yeah, these don't look like the Marvel Universe characters because, just to be perfectly frank, they were too expensive. So we went, because those limitations breed,
Inspiration?
Yeah, limitations make you better because you have to be creative. And I think that would have made for a better game if they had used that limitation instead of the not the faux Avengers that they had up there.
Those characters are not.
The faux Avengers.
They kind of suffer from. Is it Ret? Or no? It's NetherRealms that created the Justice League fighting game, right? Or is it somebody?
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of suffers from the fact that the characters don't look all that great because I hate the way NetherRealms makes their makes the few of the Justice League characters look. So.
Yeah, they look weird. They look off.
Yeah.
But that's what I would have done. But I say this as a Marvel fan. Like I kind of do. I like the Avengers. I have Avengers comics. But anything would have been better. I mean, because I'll keep it real. That Nintendo Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 is not that good. It really isn't. But
I would actually prefer that over what they did with the Marvel Avengers that was on the other system of sorts.
No, I agree. One to one, comparing them side by side, the Ultimate Alliance 3 is better than Square Enix's Avengers. But if you compare Ultimate Alliance 3 to Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2, it's terrible. It's not a good game. It shouldn't even be called an Ultimate Alliance game because it really doesn't have that same level of creativity and fun factor that those other games had. But Nintendo got that license and they wanted to do something with it, and they want to have some variety on the console. So I'm not gonna get angry about that. But I mean, just 1-to-1, it's clearly not of the same level of those other titles from
Not
like back in the day. But I mean, it's still. I mean, they were smart enough to say we aren't going to be able to get these people's likenesses, so don't even try and do something creative. Than what they tried to do on the Avengers, which you can clearly tell they were like, okay, we can't get Scarlett Johansson's likeness, so we'll use faux Jansen, faux Thor, not Tony Stark, not Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been better if they'd have just gotten Robert Downey Jr.'s character from Kurt Lazarus from Tropical Thunder to play Tony Stark. I'm a dude playing another dude playing another dude. Hey man, you went full retard, man. That would have been a more fun game than what we got.
Yeah.
Hey, you never go full retard.
Hey man, what do you mean we? That would have been a fun game. It would have been ridiculous, but there would have been something hilarious about it. But I mean, there's some seeds of goodness in the Avengers game. Like I said, the single player from the people that I've talked to who've played it, they say that the single player is actually really good and it tells a good story. But once you get to the multiplayer, it just kind of falls apart because of the free to play mechanics that were like half baked in there.
Yeah. Now, speaking of hack jobs, the PlayStation 5 just got hacked. Found this out about a couple of days ago.
Again?
I guess again.
Oh boy!
I saw a title by I forgot his name, the Australian guy. Apparently the PS5 this is like the second time it's been hacked, and I guess they've gone even deeper into the OS, where they've gotten something called root keys, which I'm guessing are like core components to the overall operating system, and being able to have more access to the operating system. But yeah, there was a screenshot posted on Twitter showing a debug option. So the PlayStation 5 could eventually. I think this is about as. Because I think the Switch, within the first year of its life, it got hacked with a paperclip. And that's one of the reasons why Nintendo came out with the red box Switch to combat that. So yeah, so we could be seeing the same problem with the PS5 as we are seeing with the Switch, with games getting released early, because people are getting the code or getting the ROMs early and playing them and posting them all on Twitter and YouTube and other social media platforms. What do you guys think of this era of gaming? Where systems just get hacked and people just dump everything online.
This is what happens when you, especially. Well, no, I was going to say this is what happens when you build your console. Your console is basically a micro PC, because that's all the PS4 and the Xbox Series X really are. They're just gaming micro PCs. They're not really consoles in the classical sense of the term.
Yeah.
So, like case in point, the N64 was a console. The N64 is really hard to emulate. Okay? Like even now, there are games, even if you have like the best N64 emulator, there are certain games that don't run close to 100% on even the best N64 emulator. Same thing with the GameCube. But guess what?
The more PC they get, the easier it is.
Yeah. The more PC like you make your console, the easier it is to emulate. So there you go.
And also, that, and we have the internet, so information travels around quickly because the evolution of the hacked um, happened pretty rapidly. You know, start with a screenshot of the
Yeah.
debug mini screen, and then all of a sudden people were at the, you know, getting to the core of the OS, meaning, people will say, well, now we can use homebrew stuff, but we all know what this is going to be used for. It's going to be used for piracy. It's going to be used to play free
And
PlayStation
emulation.
5 games,
Yeah.
emulation, potentially. So, yeah, that's what it's going to be used for.
I'm going to say this right now. I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel bad when any console gets hacked at this point, because the way I feel about it is, if you spend $550 on a console, if you want to take the console and run it over with your car, you've spent the money. You can do whatever you want to with it. If someone wants to take their console and hack it to run things it doesn't normally run, like if someone's able to hack a PS5 to run Wii games, then let them. Who cares? Sony got their money. That doesn't mean they're not going to buy other games on the system. So let them. I don't care.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree. I think honestly, if you're gonna do that sort of thing, hopefully you know the risk because I think when the 3DS got hacked, there were, you had to avoid updating your console because they could just brick it. And it's probably gonna be the same thing with the PlayStation 5 eventually. If they see that there's, unfamiliar software running on the console, they'll just brick it, and then you'll just have a paperweight.
Yeah,
So,
but all you have to do is run it through a VPN, or just don't connect it to the internet.
yeah, you could do that, or potentially you could just reset the BIOS inside the motherboard if you know how to do that. So
I mean, yeah. I hate to say this. I know some people are going to get mad at me, but I'll say a disclaimer. I have a hacked Wii.
yeah, I have a
I have
Wii as well.
a normal. I have a white. I have a white hacked Wii. I also have a black Wii that is not hacked. So I'm not one of those people. Oh, the reason I was able to play a lot of Japanese only RPGs back in the day was because I had an EverDrive, and I would basically buy the Super Famicom ROMs and patch them, and then play it through that. And that's a form of hacking and piracy and emulation. And I just, you know, now, these are games that were never localized, so it's not like, oh my god, these people you're stealing, because they were never brought over. So, how can you steal something that they never gave you a chance to buy? But I'm not like anti. Oh, how dare these people play these games? I don't. If you don't want people to if Nintendo doesn't want people to play Mother 3 by downloading the ROM and patching it, make it available. Because the people who are really interested in it and don't want to pirate it, they'll buy it. But if you're not going to make it available and people want to play it, then that's the only way they can play it. So,
Yeah.
Same thing with other things, make it available, people will buy it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, it's whatever, should you be, for example, stealing Metroid Dread and playing it either on your computer or your Switch? I don't think you should. Are people gonna do it?
But
More
if you
than likely.
buy Metroid Dread, you buy a copy of Metroid Dread and you rip it, and it's your business what you do with it.
Yeah, at that point, it's kind of your business, and you better just be willing to assume any responsibility that comes with doing that. So yeah,
I mean, I'm just this is just my own personal thing, but I have basically ripped all of my JRPGs for my Super Famicom, and they're on an EverDrive flash card.
yeah,
So then I can play those games without having to go backwards and forwards, trying to, you know, play those games. It's a pain. It's a pain going backwards and forwards, trying to keep everything together, especially for RPGs where, you know, especially when you want to play hacked versions of those RPGs. Like if you want to play Final Fantasy, a new quest of Final Fantasy 2. Sorry, Final Fantasy 4 here in America. Like it's kind of hard to like always be pulling out cartridges, and some hacked versions of games you can't play. You have to play them emulated, so it's just easier. Um, so, but no, I'm not one of those people. It's like, oh no, it's piracy. I'm like, look, I bought your game, I spent my money, and now I want to do what I want to with it.
yeah. Anyway, on to more broken games. Battlefield 2042 is apparently when the beta came out. Turns out that it was broken. The beta was broken. Wasn't running as smoothly as it should have. Um, I don't know if these companies understand what a beta actually is, but there just seems to be a habit. This seems to be a reoccurring problem with Battlefield games. So it'll probably come out all sorts of messed up when it finally releases. And honestly, I thought the game looked pretty interesting. It has what, like 120, uh was it like 60 versus 60 or something like that, or
64 versus 64 on
64?
64 versus 64 on PC.
Yeah, yeah. So you got
It doesn't
120.
have that many on console.
Uh, so yeah. Well, I'll be waiting to see what that turns into. But I mean, it is EA. What did you guys think about this game?
And I'm thankful that I swore off EA anything. Oh boy, that makes me glad I'm not on the boat at all. What about you boys?
Uh,
I mean, I've said this before. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, like I said, I thought I'm not super into Battlefield, but I like the whole futuristic aspect that they're going for it in the large multiplayer.
Yeah, I like the concept behind it. Um, I am not one of those people who's like, "Oh, this is the best game ever." But I mean, I've never really been into Battlefield, not even the Star Wars one.
Yeah.
That's basically what EA's Star Wars Battlefront was. It was just basically like a it was basically just like a it was a Star Wars skin on Battlefront. Um,
Yeah.
and I wasn't cool with that because I was like, you know, like how do you have all this technology and you make something that is fundamentally has less content than games from like, you know, 15, 20 years ago. But then I looked and saw, oh wait, this is EA. Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's EA's MO.
But so Apple a few days ago. Oh, before we move on, is there anything else you guys would like to say before about this topic before we move on to the next?
Um,
No. All right. Well,
unsurprising.
yeah, yeah. I don't think anybody's surprised. But Apple a few days ago, I don't know, somewhere in Europe, they had a they had a meeting um, because I guess the European Union wants to make it so manufacturers allow people to sideload apps on their on their products. For those of you that don't know what sideloading is, it's the ability to download software from a third party source rather than relying on, say, the App Store or the Google Play Store. Android, I guess it really depends on the manufacturer, but the software, at least for Android, allows for sideloading. Apple does not. You have to do a lot of trickery. Um, there's a there's a application called. Let me look it up real quick. It's called Alt Store. Yeah, it's called Alt Store, which you which allows you to download applications that are not on Apple's App Store, but you gotta do some trickery in order to get it to work. And so you know, Apple is like, well, you can't, you can't do that because of, there could be malicious software or whatever that could get into somebody's iPad or iPhone, but they already allow this on their MacBooks. Everybody kind of does this anyway on their computers because you don't need to go. For example, you don't need to use the Windows Store to download most of your applications. You just type in Google. If there's a particular application that you want to get or you want to purchase, you go to usually a third party. And the truth is, Apple just wants that 30% cut. They don't want to lose that 30% cut. Um, what do you guys think?
I
Hello?
agree. I
Oh,
think it's the 30%. Yeah, I agree. I think it's the 30% cut. I also think it's also about control because
yeah,
Apple is notorious about controlling everyone's not gaming, everyone's experience with their stuff.
yeah,
You have to use their app store. You have to go through them. And so then they can charge you. And I mean, thinking that the latest iPhone is like $1,200 before taxes. I mean, if I spend $1,200 on a phone, okay, on a smartphone, and then you tell me I can't put stuff on it that I want to, I have to go through your store and use your apps, I'm gonna be a little upset.
yeah. You're their phones are more expensive than their phones are about as much as their base model MacBook Pro. I'm just kind of like you can't,
Yeah,
and you're trapped by using their app store. But if you want to go outside of their app store, download other apps, you got to use a whole bunch of trickery in order to do that. It's just like
yeah,
you drop a cool G on a smartphone or a electronic device, electronic computing device, which smartphones are. Um, you should be able to do whatever you want with it, and you should obviously, those of us who know what we're doing, they should allow people to assume any responsibility uh, for downloading stuff they shouldn't have downloaded.
Well, I mean, for me it goes beyond that. It's just if you spend money on a product, you should be able to do whatever you want to with it, as long as you aren't doing something illegal. I don't mean like something that's like, um, uh, you know, like that might violate the EULA. I mean, literally, it's illegal. Like you can't buy a Ford Mustang and attach a turret to the top of it and go around shooting people.
Yeah,
But if you want to take your Ford Mustang and trick out the engine to make it more efficient, it's your business,
yeah,
you know? And I think
yeah,
this should be the case in any electronic, like, console, PC, laptop, phone. If you wanna open it up and add something to it, you spent your money on it. You should be allowed to do that
yeah, yeah,
because they got their money. You bought the product. They got their money. It's not like you stole it off the back of a truck and then you modified it. You spent money. You bought it. Like, who are they to tell you how to cook it? It's like if you bought something. It's like if you bought Kobe beef, like you got some Kobe steaks. If you want to take those Kobe steaks and make chili with it, I mean, that's kind of sacrilegious, but you can do it. You bought it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, honestly, you know, honestly, there's probably gonna come a point where they're gonna have to open it up a bit more, but we'll see how they figure out a workaround.
What they'll probably do is what Apple always does. They'll probably change the EULA and say, hey, if you download a third party app, your EULA is null and void. And if your stuff breaks, you got to spend, if you get an iPhone X, you got to spend another $1,200 to get a new
Yeah,
one
yeah, that sounds like something they would probably
or do a
do.
complete system wipe. Yeah, do a complete system wipe and get a new one. That's basically what they're going to do
Yeah,
because it's Apple and they're greedy.
yeah, and yeah, like you said, they'll just essentially be like, we have no responsibility. And what happens if you download uh, an app from a third party vendor? So you're on your own.
Yeah, you
But
know.
yeah, but earlier earlier this week, uh, Mario whipped Bowser into the ropes, gave him the boot, and took him to task. So this quote I will be reading from comes from PC Gamer. Nintendo has won a major victory in a case against 50-year-old Canadian Gary Bowser, a member of a hacking group team executor who was arrested in 2020. Bowser, better known as uh, Gary Opa, online plead guilty to 2 counts: conspiracy to circumvent technological measures and to traffic in circumvention devices alongside other members of Team Executor, and trafficking in circumvention devices is laid out in a plea agreement filed on October 28, obtained by uh, Torn Freight. He now faces a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison for each count. Nintendo has become increasingly aggressive over the last several years in punishing ROM websites and hardware hackers who make it impossible to run printed software on the Switch. Team Executor was behind a custom firmware called SXOS, which is sold through a network of resellers, controversial, uh, for profit enterprise, considering most custom firmware development is free and open source. Bowser was arrested in Dominican Republic and extradited to the U.S. to face 11 felony counts, including wire fraud and money laundering. As laid out in the plea agreement, the government made the case that while the enterprise attempted to cloak its illegal activity with a purported desire to support homebrew enthusiasts who wanted to design their own games, the predominant and primary design of the enterprise products was to allow purchasers to play pirated ROMs. So essentially, Executor is a company that was creating mod devices to essentially play pirated games. So what happened was that Nintendo was not happy having this, so they took him to court. It got so bad that even the U.S. government got involved, and so
Canadian.
um, Canadian government, yeah, the Canadian.
Yeah, I think it was Canadian government. I think it was tried in Canada.
Um,
Or maybe it was tried in
well,
America. I don't know.
yeah, I read the U.S. government. I read he was extradited to the U.S.
All right. Okay.
But yeah, Executor is a company that's actually been around for a while, actually, under various different names, and they're connected to various different
Yeah.
other people in the mod scene. They started back during the PS2 era with this mod chip for the PS2 called the Messiah, which Sony wasn't too pleased with that, and ever since then they've they've hidden. There are times when they go underground, and then they become more visible, and now they're being pushed to go underground again,
Mhm.
essentially. So, yeah. What do you guys think? How do you guys? Because I know I was reading comments and some people were upset that Nintendo went after these guys as hard as they did. Because I think what he has to pay like $450 million in damages.
4.5.
$4.5 million.
4.5 million.
Okay, four
Yeah.
point five million dollars
Well,
damages.
I mean, that's still a lot more money than I don't think he's going to be able to pay that back. Here's what I think. I think that I'm not anti hacking, homebrew. I'm not anti that. But clearly, the fact that they were charging people for this stuff, that it was not a homebrew thing. Because homebrew and like emulation, that stuff, you're not supposed to be making money off of that.
Yeah,
Once you start making money off of it and like charging people
That's gonna
for it,
be raising the flag.
yeah, that's when I'm like, okay, this is clearly something shady. Um, so and the fact that this dude was like wiring money, doing wire fraud and stuff like that, there clearly was something shady going on. Um, but I'm not going to be one of those people's like, well, yeah, go Nintendo. It's like, okay, look, this company's business is to protect their bottom line. They want to protect their money. And I'm not, that's why you have a lawyer, is to protect your money. All right. I'm not against that. What I will say is,
I was
you
about
know,
to say, you need an accountant and a lawyer. Accountant to be sure the money's there. The lawyer to
no, that's
find
if
out, protect the money.
you need an accountant if someone's doing some shady stuff trying to hide money. But, uh, you know, here's all I'm going to say. I think it's hilarious when I hear people who are poor or middle class on the side of huge businesses. Very, very odd to me. But here's what I'll say. Nintendo is doing what a company's going to do. They're going to protect their bottom line. Um, you know, even if like I said earlier, most people most people who are gonna hack or steal or pirate something, they weren't gonna buy it anyway. So it's not like they were losing money due to piracy. Um, I just think this is just them sending a message to the other groups who do this. But the other groups who do this, they're just going to go underground and find another way to do what they do.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. I mean, yeah, they want to shut down ROM sites. Well, here's a little tip, Nintendo. Maybe have a better ROM. Like, here's how the music industry got ahead of this, right? To stop piracy. They made it very convenient to stream the stuff people wanted to listen to, right?
Oh yeah.
So here's what Nintendo needs to do if they want to get people to stop pirating their ROMs. Have a way for people to play these games in a convenient and easy way. Get your online emulation of your own stuff down, and people won't pirate it. They'll say, "Hey, I can just get this online service and the game that has a huge library of games, and not just drips and drabs here and there."
Well,
That's what you do when you don't want people to steal your stuff.
the thing is, yeah, I was thinking about this. Thinking about this week. It's like when it comes to music, it's practically pointless to pirate music because it's so cheap and so accessible that there's really no point unless the album just doesn't exist anymore. Unless for whatever reason you just can't find it through any of the streaming services for whatever legal reasons.
Or certain recordings that are just really rare.
Yeah, yeah, but
and not on a recording service.
Yeah, but like you said, if Nintendo made their classic games, if all these companies made their classic games more accessible, then this wouldn't be an issue. A lot of these games are old, and they've made more. They've already made their money off these games pretty much. So creating a service that you can easily, like a monthly service that you can download the games and play them locally to your device for, a certain amount of money, a month or a year. Eventually, make it pointless to pirate games they're just if they're just accessible, if they're just that accessible. But for whatever reason, they don't want to do it.
Yeah, and I know people are going to get mad at me when I say that, but I mean, to me, it just seems kind of like a no-brainer. Like, if you make stuff accessible and affordable, people will buy it. People will use it. Instead of coming down on people who are making your stuff more accessible to people, why don't? And this is just a thought here. This is just me spitballing. I'm going to use Nintendo as an example because they're the people who. But PlayStation is just as bad. There's tons of good PS1, PS2 games that if you want to play them, you better either keep your original PS2 because they're not on PlayStation now, and you can't use PlayStation Plus to play them either.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of Yeah, look at the PlayStation 1 micro console and how embarrassing that was. And it had potential. It had potential to pull out some pretty good games, but it flopped. And
yeah, Sony killed the micro console boom. Single-handedly killed it. They pulled an Atari 2600 on it.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much after that came out, nobody really talked about micro consoles, you know, like that anymore. I mean, there were what was that? What was that console that came out with was that Bonk's Adventure or whatever?
The TurboGrafx 16, yeah, the TurboGrafx 16 one, which was cool. It had a decent array of games. A lot of people liked it,
Yeah,
but
didn't really talk. I didn't really hear much. I didn't really hear a lot
it did
about it, but
okay
I
from what I
heard
remember.
I saw some pretty good reviews on the system. So yeah, well, our last topic is Project Slippy. So Project Slippy is a mod for Super Smash Bros. Melee. Because last year, 2020 brought about the COVID pandemic, and nobody could go anywhere. And so all those fighting tournaments were canceled. So what a group of people did was, they decided to hold an online tournament using a mod to play Super Smash Bros. Melee online. Nintendo shut it down because people were using, well, they felt were illegal copies of the game, which technically they were if you downloaded them online. I mean, there's really no way to tell if anybody actually ripped the game or not. And the last I checked, it's pretty hard to rip a GameCube game. Uh, but yeah,
Oh God.
and so that turned into a big mess, and people were upset at Nintendo. Nintendo, how could you do this? How dare you? But I think a lot of it, I mean, like we said earlier, Nintendo's protecting their bottom line. You know, because a lot of these tournaments, there are cash prizes. You also have to pay to enter these tournaments. So now it becomes a little less gray and a little more black and white because now there's money involved. Uh, what do you guys think?
I
Yeah.
have thoughts, but I'd be interested to hear what Jewel has to say about it.
Now, what did you think of it, Jewel?
I had to get a drink for that one. So excuse me, trying to I was trying to at least keep my head for a moment. I have to say that I much as I am not a fan of tournament canceling, I honestly am gonna go with Nintendo on this one and say that it should have been shut down. At least because of the money BS, but that's that would be basically where I would go on.
Um,
And I'm no fan of Melee, so that's a bonus as well.
um, okay, that's a fair opinion. I
Yeah,
disagree, but
I
it's a
already
fair
started.
opinion.
Yeah, I already can see your face on that one, so I also gave him a middle finger.
Everyone is entitled to their opinion. Here's mine.
Yeah.
I disagree, but not for the reasons people might think. First of all, the first reason that they cited for this was, people are pirating this game. Okay, here's my question: when was the last time Nintendo sold Smash Brothers
Oh.
Melee? Like when it came out, and
Yeah,
maybe the
dude.
selects reprint.
Yeah,
So when have they given people the option to buy that game again
yeah,
or done a re-release? So I don't want to hear, oh, people might be pirating
Mhm.
this. It's a moot point. Like if Nintendo hasn't made money off of Melee at this point, that company must be run poorly than I thought. more poorly than I thought. Which they obviously aren't. They're spending like $400 million on their online infrastructure. They got money. Okay. In regards to the second thing, the money aspect, like this is called bad PR. Okay, because the fact of the matter is that there's like a handful of games on the Switch that use online connectivity. One of which is Phantasy Star Online. The servers for Phantasy Star Online no longer exist for the GameCube version of Phantasy Star Online. If you want to play that game online, you have to connect your game, your GameCube running the game, to a PC running a series of software. You have to connect it to your PC using some software, some specialized software that you have to download so that you can spoof a instance and then play it like that. I've done this with Phantasy Star Online, episode 1 and 2 plus, and episode 3. I've done this. And I wish Sega would come up to me and say, you can't play this game because you haven't made it available to anyone for years. Like, this is the only way I can. Now, I have my original copies, but still. But in terms of Nintendo canceling the thing, I mean, this was when they should have been like, hey, okay, you guys can have the tournament, but we're going to null the financial things because you're basically playing a gray area version of these games, or we suspect, because you really can't verify it, we suspect you're playing a gray area of these games. But, I mean, we will help, because the thing is that we were in the middle of a pandemic and people wanted something that was going to take their mind off of what was going on. And I can understand that. But this just shows that, I mean, you know, look, they care about money. And as a business owner, I understand that. But, I mean, this is kind of there's caring about money, and then there's being an a-hole. And this is bordering on being an a-hole versus caring about money a little bit. Just a little bit. I mean, you know, like, and I agree with Jewel. I don't really like Smash Brothers Melee that much. Like, personally, I like Brawl a little bit better.
Yeah.
Just because of the single player, I like Brawl a little bit better. I know that the multiplayer, a lot of more casual things were added to make it more enjoyable for people who weren't used to playing Smash Brothers. And I know a lot of the Melee fans didn't like that, but I don't really care what they like or don't like. But I do think it's kind of a D move to cancel the tournament because people don't want to go to a physical location during a pandemic and play a game physically. That's just I mean, I'm sorry, that's brain thinking. I'm sorry. That is like, are you let me put it this way. Here's what I'm going to say, okay? If that type of thinking is the reason why Nintendo's output of games were so lackluster during the pandemic and they missed like basic stuff like, hey, okay, you're having the Mario anniversary, but why not Donkey Kong's? This is 40th, or Link's sorry, as
I was about
all
to say soggy 35th.
Well, I was about to curse with how sorry Link's anniversary is, but I'm not cursed. But here's what I'll say: if the reason that didn't get done because people had to physically go to an office instead of doing stuff at home, that just tells you how, in some ways, Nintendo is outdated in some of their thinking. But I mean, considering that they're a Japanese company, and a lot of Japanese companies their output went way down because they wanted people to come to an office to work. And I agree, yes, there's some things you have to be in an office for. But if you're coding, you don't need to be in an office to code. You don't.
Nope.
You don't. You can do that from home.
Well, the thing
okay.
Yeah. The thing is, I guess the problem I have is again the money stuff. Because now money's involved, but there should have been a different way to potentially handle it without
Yeah.
without involving money. I think if money wasn't involved, I don't think it should have been a problem.
Here's how Nintendo could have fixed this
Mhm.
easily without doing anything to make people angry and without getting like a PR kerfuffle. Hey, you guys, you can't really do cash prizes, but I tell you what we will do. You can have official Nintendo swag. Like
Right.
here's a reprint of like the grand prize is you get like 16 Game Watches, like OG original Game Watches. Those things are rare and worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like that could have been something cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, just shutting it down, kind of like, I mean, they're like old man Simmons. Like I don't want these kids playing baseball in my yard, so I'm gonna take the baseball so now no one can play. It's like, come on, man, don't be that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Mhm.
yeah.
Make everyone suffer because one person. They're like for those of you who have siblings, it's like when you were in the car and your parents were like, if one more person does something, I'm turning everybody around. Now, why does everyone have to suffer because a group of people messed it up for everybody else? Like, I don't. That's not fair.
Mhm.
And I know life isn't fair. I understand that, but that's still kind of a D move. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Thank you for hitting person.
You know,
I got a sibling, remember?
it's not a cool move to make everyone suffer and to punish everybody because of a group of people. It's not cool, but we're in Furukawa's Nintendo. Furukawa's Nintendo is not like Iwata's Nintendo that was cool and let a lot of stuff slide. They weren't worried about stuff. This is Furukawa, and Furukawa. The more I see of Furukawa, the more I realize he's kind of a D.
he,
Donk.
he's kind of bringing Nintendo back to old man Nintendo.
Yeah, but old
uh,
man Nintendo. Like I'm one of those people. I don't think that was the golden age of Nintendo
yeah.
because they burned a lot of bridges during the age of Yamauchi.
Yeah.
Burning bridges is not smart in
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. That's
You can't go it alone.
yeah. You had what? Um, they burned bridges with obviously burned bridges with Sony, which that one's pretty debatable. Then then
Where Enix,
Square
sorry,
Enix and SquareSoft and Rockstar. That's why it took forever
DMA Designs.
yeah. Like
DMA Design, like some of the biggest games of all time, Nintendo missed out on because of their hard headedness and arrogance.
there was
Love
there
Nintendo, but
the
they
whole
missed out on it.
the whole Sony thing probably could have been handled. Probably could have been handled a little bit better. Like going on stage and pantsing him right in front of the public like that. That probably wasn't the best way to handle it. I mean,
Yeah.
I understand why they did it because of the agreement, but I don't know.
But basically, Nintendo is like Batman. They created their own worst enemy with Sony. But I mean, there's a lot of really good games that if all you've played are Nintendo consoles, there's a lot of really good games that no Nintendo console has ever gotten until like years after it doesn't matter anymore because of
Yeah,
that strong arm how they strong armed people back in the day when Yamauchi was in control. Now I don't think Furukawa is at that level, but I mean that's not a good way to do business.
yeah.
I mean it like could you imagine how successful the N64 would have been if it had had Final Fantasy VII?
Oh yeah, that was wildly successful.
Could you imagine how successful the GameCube would have been if it had had Grand Theft Auto
Yeah,
3, Vice
yeah,
City, San Andreas?
yeah.
And they didn't get those games because there was a time when they were basically busting people's orbs.
What was it? I don't even know if they were called Rockstar at the time. They might have
DMA
been.
Designs.
Yeah.
They were called DMA Designs back in the day. And that's
So-
all because of being arrogant.
Yeah, there were like
You know,
two or
they
three.
lost one of their best third-party developers. Or sorry, second-party developers with Rare. Because just having attitudes about stuff.
There were like 2 or 3 games that they were making, DMA Designs. They ended up getting canceled. So it's just kind of like, well, we're not, we're not gonna deal with Nintendo if they're just gonna keep canceling our games.
Yeah, and they haven't.
Yeah.
You know, and I understand there are people who don't like who don't like Rockstar games, but you can't deny that Nintendo's consoles would have been, especially some of their lower selling consoles, would have been more successful if they had GTA on the system.
I mean,
Like I know the GameCube because
I'm not really a fan of Rockstar games, but I'll definitely admit that they sell. But GTA is still selling strong.
yeah,
It's still selling strong.
yeah.
So.
You know, yeah, I know some people, but I understand that you don't like it, but looking at it from strictly a business standpoint, I'm just saying that, having that attitude, this roughshod, we're going to do whatever we want. And, if you don't like it, I mean, like I said, they burnt their bridge with Rare. And I understand people are like, well, Rare was going down. Yeah, but I mean, not every studios have ebbs and flows. They could have rebuilt that studio because I remember there was a time when, there are some Nintendo first-party studios that kind of have ebb and flows, like the Kirby games. HAL. There was a time when HAL was going up and down.
Yeah.
There's been a time when Intelligent Systems was going up and down. Like, not every studio is going to be 100% all the time.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
So, whatever.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you brought up the Nouveau in the chat. What have they been doing?
Recently they were updating some of their systems, and it caused several dozen games in order to stop working, and some of them had to go back to certain programs in order to update them, or even downright get rid of Denuvo entirely. And that was this week.
They could fix this if they. Sorry.
There are games that would run a whole lot better, because like Borderlands runs like garbage. That's one game I know. I think that uses Denuvo. Probably run a lot better if it didn't have that piracy software. There's also a few. Just Cause 3, I think, used it, and that game ran pretty poorly when it first came out. I mean, the problem with a lot of this anti-cheat software is it makes your games run like garbage.
Yep.
So
it does. I mean, there are games that I have that I've bought, legitimately bought, right? And the anti-piracy software made them run so poorly that in order for me to play the game, I had to download a pirated version of the game in order to get it to run.
Yeah, isn't that?
Do you know how sad that is?
Yeah, that's pretty sad. That's
like
Saints
Row the Third Remastered. I'm for those of you who don't know, I'm a huge Saints Row fan. Love Saints Row. I basically had to on the Epic Store, which it uses Denuvo or something like Denuvo, but basically on the Epic Store it runs like hot buttered butt on the Epic Store version of that game. But I downloaded after I bought the game. I bought the game twice. I bought once on the Epic Store, but I used like 2 of those $10 coupons, so it was like $10. But then I bought it on I bought it on Steam. And Steam, no problem, because Steam has its own inbuilt kind of lighter lighter stuff, lighter DRM. But I'm just like, I mean, why do we have to go through this,
Yeah. I mean, why do you punish people who buy the game legitimately? Who just want to buy the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I don't know. Maybe they'll figure out a nice lightweight DRM managing system that doesn't completely cripple your game when you play it. Because I obviously I know that they don't want to. It's like, they don't want to come out and announce, be like, oh, yeah, we're not using DRM anymore because they're afraid of it being open season, people just pirating their. If you bring out a good game, people are gonna buy it. And even people who pirate the game to try to test it out, if they like it enough, they'll end up buying it. So
They'll buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll buy it.
So I don't know.
Let's keep it real. All this piracy stuff is just because remember when they did that big European thing? They did a big study to determine if piracy was actually hurting games. And it turns out that no, it isn't.
No.
They aren't losing any money. It's just they want to have control. It's these companies want to have control. They want to control people. They want to control the narrative. They want to control who plays the game. It's just nothing but control.
Yeah.
And let's keep it real. It's the reason we no longer get demos. Because a lot of these games, if demos came out, people wouldn't buy the game. They'd play the demo and be like, "This game stinks."
Oh yeah. It was the 7th gen.
I consider them a double-edged sword.
It was the 7th gen.
It gives them a taste of what they're on. Sorry.
It was the 7th gen where they just stopped producing demos altogether. It's like,
yep,
because they wanted people to just trust the fact the game was good and buy the game because they couldn't afford to have demos. They just couldn't.
Yeah, you're right. They couldn't afford because people would find out the game was trash.
Yeah.
People are like, "Oh, this game is terrible." Like, I'll give an example. If there was a demo for Breath of the Wild, I wouldn't have bought that game.
Yeah.
I question that.
If I would have found out, okay, there's no dungeons. There's only a few dungeons in this game, and they aren't really dungeons. You don't really get items in dungeons. The weapons have a endurance meter, and then they break. Be like, I wouldn't want to buy this game, even if it is the new Legend of Zelda. But the game didn't have a demo, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be great! Look how great it looks!" And I play it, I'm like, I'm stuck because I don't trade in or sell my Nintendo games. I'm one of those people. So, I was like, okay, I'll play it, but there's a lot of games. If they had demos, I wouldn't have bought them. Like Skyrim for the PS3. Now on PC, where I got it on sale for $10. $10 is a compulsion buy. You're like, I'm just gonna buy it. Yeah. But once you get to $50, $60, if something costs $50 or more, you should be required to have a demo.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
$60 is a bill. $60 is you going out to a low mid tier restaurant with your significant other. $60 is you stocking up a portion of your fridge. $60 is gassing up your car twice. At half a tank. At half a tank. Not a full tank. not where it's darn near empty, but half a tank. So that's a lot of money, and you want people to put this down just because you said the game's going to be good? Really? You made a demo that looked pretty? Come on, man.
Yeah, or people will pre-order will pre-order a game off of a CGI trailer. It's like
Yeah.
they haven't even showed gameplay yet, but you'll have people pre-order the special edition of the game because of just a CGI trailer. That's how bad things have gotten.
Yep.
But is there any other topics you guys like to bring up before we close out?
Um, um,
I think we're all right.
I think we covered it all.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I got nothing else to add. Nothing. I mean, anything I'd want to bring up, I'm saving for tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anything you'd like to pimp out before we call it a night?
I think I would do this one for Red's sake. So, tomorrow evening at 7:30, we'll be having the BS Busters Midweek podcast, and we'll cover various topics that ain't done on here, at least hopefully.
Yeah. So that's going to be fun. Also, I have some videos I'm working on. Trying desperately to get KOTOR to run, but if I can't, I'm just gonna review KOTOR 2. So that's what I'll have to do. Just have to review KOTOR 2. I mean, I don't feel bad about it because KOTOR 2 is a good game. So, like the last few, like most of the review games I've re-reviewed have been good games because I get to choose those, and I'm not like forced to review something that's terrible. So, I feel pretty good about that. Like, I'd feel really bad if I had to re-review stuff that was bad. It's like, I'm re-reviewing Bubsy. No.
No. Oh, can't go through that. Can't go through that again. Can't go through that again.
No, I mean, I never was into Bubsy. I remember because everyone had that kid who had every game. Like every time a game would come out, they would get it before anyone else. And I was friends with that kid. And every time I went to their house, like they had the Sega channel before anyone. They had Bubsy before anyone. But the joke was on them because Bubsy's terrible.
Yeah.
I was about to say, who the heck thought Bubsy was good?
Accolade, because they were like, we need a mascot.
I was gonna say that wasn't that mascot Desperation.
I mean, some of the 16-bit mascots weren't terrible. Like Arrow the Acrobat, his games weren't bad. They were basic, but they weren't bad. Earthworm Jim was a 16-bit mascot. He was great.
Yeah, I was gonna say that some of those were born of mascot desperation.
Well, yeah, everyone was trying to get into the mascot game, but not all of them were terrible. It's just Bubsy was terrible.
Yeah.
No matter if it's 2D or 3D. Oh, God's help you if you tried the 3D ones.
I mean, Bubsy 2D is bad. Bubsy 3D is just like Bubsy 3D makes you want to find the people who made the game and slap them in the face. It's like, what were you thinking? Don't ever do that again. That's it. And actually, the new Bubsy games are pretty bad too.
And this is Kenoshi Abominito. I will be working on. I'll be working on recording, doing the audio for the first part of the Wii U retrospective. Probably start on that tomorrow, and